We are excited to welcome Michael Eaton as our third athlete featured in our Runners of Louisville segment. This interview was conducted by his former teammate and our Swags Elite athlete, Kat McLean, with a few appearances from Lainey Vincent. We hope you enjoy this interview.
So I'm going to go over your accolades for people who don't know. You currently live in Seattle, but you ran in Kentucky for years.
Yeah.
You were born in Bowling Green, is that right?
Grew up in Bowling Green, so I actually was born out a little bit into Indiana. My parents are from outside Indianapolis, Brownsburg, but I was actually born in Evansville, Indiana, and spent most of my first through about fifth grade. I was in an area called Hopstadt, but from there, sixth grade on, basically, I lived in Kentucky. So.
Okay, yeah. So when you sent me your resume, I was like, this is amazing. Look at all that he's done. I'm like, I don't think I could write one thing on my running resume, but so to give a little background, you went to Greenwood High School.
Correct.
Yeah, and you were multiple time state champion. And that in itself is an accomplishment.
Yeah.
And then you went on to run for the University of Louisville. You were a two-time NCAA Division I All-American in the 10K. You were a three-time Olympic marathon trials qualifier. That's amazing. 2012, 2016, and 2020. You're a member of the 2012 USA IAAF. Wait, am I saying that right? IAAF World Half Marathon Championships.
Yeah.
But in high school, I forgot to mention that you were also a part of the World Junior Cross Country Championships team. So,
yeah, in Japan.
And on here, you didn't write that you were the Foot Locker South champion.
Oh, I did leave that out.
Yes, that's a huge deal.
I didn't run very well at nationals, so I
But you won the South, which is amazing.
I did win the South my senior year. Yeah, I went out. The rumor was the whispers on the internet after the race was that somebody clocked me at 58 seconds for the first 400 in that race. But jokes on them, I don't think I ever broke 60 in high school. So on a track, so.
Well, maybe that was the time you did it, and it just was unofficial.
Yeah, that quarter marker was definitely short then.
Yeah, that was a stellar race. I remember when you did that, and I was like, yeah, I mean, I didn't know you at the time, but I was like, yes, a Kentucky boy just won the South. And I just thought it was so cool that our state was representing at Foot Locker so well. So your personal bests, I'll go over these two because they're pretty amazing. 1 mile, 4:09, 3K, 8 flat, 1,500, 3:52, 5K, 13:51, 10K, 28:41. For the half marathon, you've run 1:03 flat, and for the marathon, you've run 2:18 flat. But take us back to the start. How did you get started in running? Was there someone who influenced you, or did you just think it was an interesting sport, or just talk to us about that?
This is a good question. I got into running mainly because my dad kind of pulled me into running, but not before I tried basically everything else. I played soccer, I played basketball, I played baseball, and I was bad at all of them. I was in no key roles that involved handling the ball at any time. The closest I got to that was they tried to make me a center in basketball, but I was terrible at layups or even just tiny jump shots. The only thing I had going for me in any of these sports was my ability to just run, continually.
Yeah.
I could last the game. I had good stamina, but
yeah.
But my lack of skill in other areas quickly made me obsolete. I mean, I think I tried out for basketball my 7th grade year, and I was the tallest person in my middle school by probably 5 inches, and I didn't even make the first round of cuts. That's how bad it was.
Oh.
So, but I basically moved into running kind of in a time period before I came to Kentucky. At least when I first noticed I was decent at it. We had 2 PE teachers in my elementary school in Georgia. And one was the football coach. And when you went to his class, you went into the weight room and you weightlifted. And the other one was the soccer coach. and her big thing was cardio, and so she would take us out and make us run laps around the around the soccer field. But every year they would do like a timed mile for like every grade, and that year, me and a buddy in my PE class broke the record. Both of us broke it for like fastest 6th grade mile. And so that was like the first sign that maybe I was going to be running. I don't remember what the time was. It wasn't anything like crazy fast, but it was enough to get it on my dad's radar.
Yeah.
So when we moved to Bowling Green my 7th grade year, I came out for cross country, and basically by the end of the season, like edged out a senior to make the varsity squad on the high school team, and that was kind of it.
Oh, that's amazing.
There was no
no.
There was no more other sports after that. It was like that's what
I feel bad for that senior, but also like look at everything that you've done. Like little did he know that you were going to go on to do all these great things.
He's still got to go. So I jumped 2 guys. So I jumped him to bump up, and then one other guy. And basically the coach decided that if he was going to have to choose between me and this other guy, he'd have to kick off the senior. And so he decided to kick off the other guy because I'd beat them both, but he didn't kick off the senior because it was his last year. So the senior still got to
Okay.
And it was the senior's own fault. He gave blood the week of regionals. So, I mean, he just was asking for lackluster performance. So that was just a tactical error on his part.
Yeah, definitely. I remember doing that once in high school, but I remember feeling like it wouldn't affect me at all, but obviously it does. But you just feel invincible when you're in high school and think that you can do that. And nope, doesn't work that way. We
didn't know enough back then. That's the problem.
So you had, like I said, you had an extremely successful high school career. I also remember watching you run track meets and stuff too, and just being like, he's so talented. But you were obviously offered a lot of scholarships from different colleges, and then you ultimately chose University of Louisville. So what was that process like, hearing from other schools, and like what made you ultimately decide to go to U of L to run and to go to school?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You would think, based on my times and my Foot Locker performances, I was offered a lot of scholarships, but I was not.
What?
Yeah. So my track times were not, while they were good for Kentucky, were nationally not competitive until like my senior year. I had 4:20 for the 1600 meter, which nowadays is like people chuckle at like that. Like that doesn't even win the state meet in like Kentucky anymore, I don't think. And until I ran 9:11 indoors my senior year in the 2 mile, my 2 mile wasn't like nationally recognizable. But what I had going for me was qualifying for Foot Locker my junior year. Mm-hmm. And then my senior year of cross country, running like the fastest cross country 5K time in the country that year for a high schooler.
Yeah.
But by that point I'd already committed, so it was irrelevant. I made quite a few unofficial visits to a couple different schools, UK, U of L, NC State, Virginia, a lot of like the ACC kind of over on that coast. And really it came down to NC State and Louisville. And I made my official visit to NC State first, and talked with Raleigh Geiger, the coach there. I really liked it there. I was really heavily leaning that direction. But he didn't have a lot to like money-wise to offer. He said he'd maybe come up with something, but then my dad basically like laid it out for him that with like my academics and what they were offering at Louisville, I was basically going to be like fully covered. Like I was going to have a full ride if you combine my athletic money and my academic money. And basically Geiger was like, oh, we can't match that. And so he never really even tried. Like I went to Louisville shortly after going on my official visit there, and that kind of sealed it. I called back NC State. I called back Geiger to like let him know the news. And when I said, hey coach, this is Michael Eaton, and he said, who? And that basically like sealed the deal.
Oh yeah. I'd have been like,
that was kind of like the pinnacle of the conversation. That was the end of it. I was like, Well, I was the guy that was at your school like a month ago for official visit. But you know what? I was just calling to let you know that I've decided to go to University of Louisville. That being said, I
Yeah.
chose University of Louisville just because the team, it was just a better fit. I was close to home, but not too close to home. And Coach Mann and Coach Allen were just much more persuasive in their arguments for why to come there and how they could help me in my college career and beyond. So it was a pretty easy choice
Yeah.
once it got down to that. But I think because I only really did 2 official visits, I never really got the chance to like talk about offers from other people. I think there was maybe an offer on the table from Western Kentucky, but my high school coach never actually told me about it. My dad found this out like years later.
Oh no.
So
Did you ever bring it up to him?
Yeah, I like Western, but I wanted to leave Bowling Green, so that was just it was flattering, and I was like really honored, but I wasn't going to stay at Western Kentucky.
Well, I think all of the Cards fans are glad that you chose Univille. But yeah, I remember Coach Mann being very personable too. Like I think they were like heavily recruiting within the state too at the time. I don't know if they still do it that way. But I just remember they were like recruiting some amazing people, like great personalities, like great runners, but also great personalities. And it seemed like most of the people they were recruiting, like you all really clicked together. And it was like we realized really quickly that you guys were like more of a brotherhood too, like not just teammates, but you guys were super close.
Yeah, it was a great time. I had a lot of the guys that came in with my year, Matt Smith and Scott, obviously.
Yeah.
It was a good crew.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. And I think that goes for the women's group too. Like it just was a solid group of people, which just made the experience like that much more fun.
Yeah, for sure.
But what was your favorite thing about running in Louisville, speaking of?
Oh, that's a great question.
And not just in college, but like post-collegiately too.
I would say probably in college. I mean, it had to be like, I think just the team atmosphere. I really liked my teammates. The ones that were there before me that kind of like set up the whole, like, just this is how we do it here, follow our lead. And then, kind of moving up into that upperclassman role and having like the younger people come in after you. Having Luke Lovelace as a roommate for 2 to 3 years was a riot. And just that crew and just the years there, just training and working hard. And, you just had your Sunday long runs that you dreaded because it was like, God, my Sunday is like gone. Like I'm going to use like all day to drive an hour out to Bernheim. And then like, we would always complain about it, but then you like look back and it's like, those were great times. And then, like just some like nasty workouts in the middle of cross country season, like hour-long fartleks that are just, why are we still doing this? And, like they work us really hard. And though it sometimes ended in us getting injured when it didn't, it was fun when looking back on it. And just that part of it.
You're like, all these memories are popping back in now, like thinking about the like freezing tempos we used to do down by the river, like literally it was probably like 13 degrees, which some people would think is not that cold, but for us, we were like, this is freezing. And it seems like I remember a story, I don't know if it was Bernheim or another place close to Bernheim that we used to do long runs, and like all the guys came back and you guys had like all these ticks all over, these tiny little ticks.
Oh,
like,
that wasn't Bernheim. That was
where was that?
That was over in Indiana. So Coach had found some like some backcountry like gravel road that we could do a run on. And yeah, we had ticks, but Coach Allen and his dog and Angie got like destroyed because we went for a run. They went and took the dog out into this like field and were like walking around the field. And we had to stop on the way back, and he bought like bottles of bleach. And we literally sat outside, we filled a tub full of bleach and we all got sponges and like scrubbed down, like
Oh.
found every tick we could find and like picked them all off. This is not good healthy way to like get ticks off your body, but coach was like so concerned about Lyme that that's what we were doing. We were like,
yeah,
still an hour out from school, and like we're stopping at this gas station in the middle of nowhere so he can buy bleach so we can like pick the ticks off of us and like cleanse our skin. It was one of the weirdest things. But yeah, I would say stuff like
well,
that.
I'm glad nobody like ended up getting Lyme disease, or that we know of.
Yeah, that we know of anyway. And then I would say post-collegiately, I think just sticking around and having a support system, having, you know, friends still to hang out with, even if we're not like training together anymore, and getting like new friends. Cause I mean, even after college, you know, we had other people that like I made new people. Dustin Betts from Indiana State, you know, moved closer into town and we trained together a lot. Mike joined our group a few years later and we all trained to try to like hit trials qualifiers. And then, you know, like every so often a post-collegiate guy would graduate out and hang out for a year or so, and we'd train with them on or off. Edwin Kabichi was a great training partner for a while, and hard as heck to race, but you know, it made you want to go harder so you could try to beat them. So like stuff like that, and then just having like the consistency of coaching through all those years that I probably wouldn't have had if I had moved away, you know, right away. So I think it was a good place, and Louisville's pretty good. It's hot in the summer, but not unbearable like some places out west. And it's, you know, the winters can be bad in like February, but for the most part, it's not unbearable.
Yeah.
So it gets cold, but as long as there's no ice, you're probably good as long as you can layer up. So I don't know. I enjoyed it.
That kind of brings me to my next question about Coach Mann, because he coached you all through college and post-collegiately, right? Is he still coaching you?
We don't have really like the same coaching relationship that we had before. I still touch base with him like every so often, not as much as I should, but when you train with somebody through like all of college, and then post-collegiately, I mean, that's a good, I probably trained under him for a good decade. And by the end of my time in Louisville as a post-collegiate, as a professional, I had been in his system so long that basically I would take our training from previous training cycles, kind of work up my own ideas, and then like pitch it to him to see what he thought. And kind of gotten to the point towards the end where I was writing a lot of my own stuff, but going to him for advice and insight. And then, you know, he'd still be at the workouts, you know, holding the stopwatch. I think one of the biggest things with Coach Mann was I can be like very, very hard on myself, and very self-critical about performances and workouts. And he's seen everything. So he has a much more loose, lighter demeanor, and can see the positive in stuff, even when, you know, I'm struggling to see it. So I think for a number of years, he was a good person to have around, just so I didn't like, you know, mentally pummel myself into oblivion, and, you know, probably would have hung him up a lot earlier than I would have needed to if I hadn't had Coach Mann there to kind of like give that positive reinforcement for all those years. So
yeah, I think he's one of those coaches that it's not just about athletics for him. It's about like you as a person. Like he truly does care about his athletes as people and like what they do with their lives. I mean, Coach Mann was at our baby shower, you know, like that's the kind of person, like he just cares about who you are as a person and your health and your family. And I just think that says a lot about a coach to be invested in the rest of your life too.
Yeah, for sure.
So you and your wife just moved to Seattle, right? You're in Seattle, right?
Yeah, we're in Seattle. We're north of downtown in this area called Green Lake. So I live about a block from a 3-mile loop around a lake, which is pretty nice. I had a lot to say in where we got to live because she got a lot to say about moving us out here. So that's kind of the negotiations we had. I think if she had her way, we'd be closer to the hospitals, but we only have one car and she uses it to get to work. So I fought kind of hard to be close to an area where I could run pretty easily. And I'm pretty close to my work as well. So, and I guess a little while, it's been like 2.5 years now. So we've been out here a while.
Yeah. What has it been like transitioning from running in Louisville to running out there? Like, is the running community different, or like, and I noticed you've gotten into trail running too. So how did that kind of evolve?
Oh, okay. So yeah, there's a really, it is. Seattle's actually a super fit city. Like people are really active out here. So there's probably 4 to 5 different running clubs in Seattle. I'm a member of Club Northwest, which I would say is probably the most competitive non-professional running club in the city. We obviously have the Brooks Beast, which are like a pro team. But Club Northwest is a club that definitely holds themselves to a standard of like training and seeking to like achieve fast times. So while it's social and people and like make friendships and have a good time, but most of the people there are there because they want to get fast. Like we had five guys and 3 or 4 women qualify for the 2020 marathon trials. So I mean that kind of shows you
Oh my gosh,
the talent pool in our city and just within our club that we had that many out of our club. I think there were like 2 other people out of the state of Washington that also qualified. One lived in Tacoma and somebody else.
Oh wow.
Where, but so yeah, it's definitely a competitive place. Good for running. The weather here is very agreeable. The summers are not hot, and the winters are dark, but they're mild. We'll have some 30s. We'll get a little bit of snow, but snow is actually really rare here. It's more just rain and not a lot of sunlight in the winter. Like it's dark at 4:30 now here.
Oh my gosh, that's so weird.
It gets worse. So yeah, at like peak, I think we only get like 7.5 hours sunlight at like the worst of it. So it's a very short day in the winter. Everybody gets happy lamps for UV light.
At least it's not too cold.
Yeah. If it was cold and dark,
really?
It would be pretty brutal. Yeah. Seasonal depression, just like whatever it is, SAD is a real deal out here. You have to watch out for it. I take vitamin D and use the lamp for the winter. You definitely you can feel it. And Jessica even more so because she leaves for work in the dark and gets back for work in the dark during the winter, like the whole time. It's pretty.
Oh man, yeah.
The trail system here in Washington is amazing. There's probably within 30 minutes you can get on a lot of good trails, and if you're willing to go a little farther, like an hour, you get in some really good stuff. And then you've got 3 different national parks right within reach within like 2 hours. You got the Northern Cascades, Mount Rainier, and the Olympic Peninsula, all 3 of which I've run in this summer. So yeah, there's mountains everywhere.
Yeah.
On a clear day, you can see them from the city. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. All right. So you're working at Brooks Trailhead. Is that what it's called?
Yep.
The Brooks Trailhead store?
Yep.
Okay. And you worked at Swags before you moved out there. So you've been involved in like the running community and like working at a running store for a long time. What is it about working? Oh, wow. What is it about working in that capacity that you enjoy?
I think I originally did it just so I have somewhere I could get like shoes affordably and have flexible schedule. That was a lot of it was I wanted to keep training after college, and a running store seemed like a good spot because they understood the running thing. And they kind of like would support me. So that's kind of how it started. And then as I got older, I found that, just being connected to the running community was really a way to stay motivated in my own training. And so I kind of began to give back that way. And then since, moving to Seattle and working for Brooks, I was a part-time sales associate here for about a year. And then I actually moved into a assistant manager role at the Trailhead store. And the Trailhead is actually Brooks' flagship retail store. So we're located in the bottom floor of the global corporate headquarters. And we kind of showcase all of their gear and product there. And part of my role as the assistant manager, it's assistant of sales and community manager. So a big portion of my job is community outreach, creating events, group runs, other activities, finding ways that we can give back to the local community. And so it's been a nice way to kind of round out time in the kind of running specialty world. You can sell shoes and all that for a long time, but it's eventually nice to kind of like find other ways to engage with the running community. And so I still sell shoes. That's primarily what I do, but getting to design events and host events, and kind of like give back to those people has been really nice. So.
Was that you that I saw in a turkey costume on their Instagram page?
Yeah, it kind of falls under my role to like do a little bit of the posting. I'm not good at social media, so like it's kind of funny. We have a lot of like much younger staff members that are a lot better than I am. But we were trying to think of something. We got all those. Brooks has these branded shirts and hats for the season. They do a bunch of like special edition stuff. So there's a shirt that says "Huffin' for Stuffin'," and it's got this big old turkey running on the front of it. So we were.
I saw that. That's so cute.
We were looking for a way to plug those items. So we thought we had that turkey costume from last year's turkey trot that we did. So and then we just kind of messed around.
No, it was good. I thought it was you, and I had to show it to Scott. I was like, "Is this Michael?" And he's like, "I can't tell." I was like, I'm pretty sure that's him. So I want to get down to some good stories, hopefully, if you have any to share. But you've competed on some of the biggest stages in the running world. So what were some of the most memorable events that you went to? I know some probably had more meaning than others, but are there any specific memories that you have from one of the major events that you can share, or anything that sticks out to you about those?
I probably got a few. Let's see. I would say in college there was some, like I never won a Big East championship, which was infuriating for someone who like came in with so many credentials out of high school and that kind of stuff. I never really got a chance to. I never really put it together at the championship. But my senior year of track, indoor season I got mono, so I wasn't able to compete. And so we knew heading into my outdoor season, my final outdoor season, it was going to be a long shot for me to make nationals. I was basically going to have to train through the entire season and then try to qualify for regionals at conference. Which is never fun because it's the 10K and it's tactical, so no one wants to run hard. So we trained all season and everything was going well, and basically we got to Big East and surprise, surprise, no one wants to lead in the 10K. So I led, pushing the pace down to what I needed it to be. And with 3 laps, it was like 2 laps to go, the usual suspects, Tito Madrano from Syracuse, and then a guy from Notre Dame, and maybe another guy from Providence, all went like kicking around me to battle it out for the top 3 spots. And, I staggered across the line and, immediately hands to my knees. I think I finished 4th or 5th or something, but I'd run like 29:40 something. And I'll never forget, I looked up and Villanova's legendary coach, Marcus O'Sullivan, is, standing over there. And we talked actually in high school before I even went to Louisville. He had come to a running camp, so I was familiar with him. And then he'd watched me, compete over the years in college at the conference meet and that kind of stuff. So he knew who I was. He just kind of shook his head and he goes, "Eaton, that is a hard way to do it." And I just looked up at him and I said, "Yeah, but I had to qualify for regionals and none of those guys were going to help me do it." And he's like, "Sure enough," and just kind of shakes his head off into the sun. And it's the fact that all those years of him watching me, for him to even give me the time of day after just getting my butt handed to me at the conference meet. He knew my struggle. He knew the struggle. He didn't. He was a sub 4 miler. He had a problem kicking to win a race, but that was never my real strength. And then, let's see.
So what did you have to do to qualify for regionals in that race?
Oh, you had to have like a top.
Did you qualify?
Yeah, I ended up getting my qualifier at that race. And then I went on. Regionals was like 4 weeks later.
Yeah. Well, see, it worked then.
Yeah, I mean, it worked. I got what I needed out of it.
Yeah.
I ended up like dropping like 30 seconds off that time at regional qualifying for nationals and made it to nationals my senior year, which was great. I was, ecstatic.
Yeah.
Regional or nationals was rough. It was like a massive thunderstorm. The race got delayed to like another day, and it didn't go well. But I made it back and got that All-American status again. So I was ecstatic to be back there.
Yeah.
One of my favorite races in Louisville was actually the last Triple Crown I was able to compete in before I moved. And I had been working really hard, training really hard. The plan was to go after a fast time at the mini marathon later that spring, but I'd never won the Triple Crown. I'd never won all 3 races. And I really, really wanted to. And so I trained pretty hard and thought that Edwin Kabichi was going to go race somewhere else because the guy was in way too good a shape to waste his time with like the races in town. But sure enough, he shows up to the 5K, and I decide that he's on like a super high mileage week, hasn't really done any speed work, so I'm going to try to just like take it out super hard and drop him. And it worked until the last 800 meters, and then I locked up and he went by me and easily took the win. And we both ran like stupid. I think he ran like 14:10 and I ran like 14:12, which on the roads, like that's I think still the fastest 5K I've run on the roads. But I was so mad. I was so mad. So I like texted Coach Mann. I was like, why? Like, he was coaching him at the time too, and I was like, why didn't you like send him somewhere else? Like, this matters a lot to me. Like, blah blah blah. And he was like, I understand how important this is to you. Just like keep working, it'll be fine. So then the 10K rolled around, and I was like, well, I'm not gonna do what I did last time because I'm not gonna get rolled up in the last 800. And so we kind of like reversed it. It was a nasty day. It seemed like that year, even though it was 2 weeks between each one, each 2-week period made it worse weather. Like it was worse each time. Like the 5K was okay. The 10K, it was like raining and like 31 degrees or 34. It was not warm. It was not a nice day. We had a nasty headwind. So we went out and like sat around for the first 2 miles, and then we started pushing. And at 5K, it was like me, Edwin, and like somebody else. And then we flipped and started heading back up along the cemetery there, back towards the finish line. Mm-hmm. And we ended up splitting like 4:32 for mile 4. And I was like, oh, this is about to get entertaining. And then we did it again. And I was like, this is brutal. Like, how long are we going to hold this? And then the way it finished back, I don't know if the course is still the same. I know
if I remember in that course, like it seems like the wind, because you're coming down into downtown Louisville, it's flat, but it seems like the wind hits you really hard.
We were lucky. The wind was in our face on the way out, so we had a tailwind on the way back.
Oh, okay, well, that's good.
And then we made that turn though, and you make that turn in downtown Louisville, and you can see the finish line like a billion miles away. It's got to be like 100 meters. And basically we duked it out for those 2 miles, pushing. And we make that turn and I surge, and then he covers my surge, but he doesn't pull away. So then I surge again, and then he covers the surge, but he doesn't pull away. And then I surge again, and he like covers the surge, but he doesn't pull away. And I was like, okay, it is like, I only have so many of these left, and he's not covering them convincingly enough to make me think he's actually got all that much left. So let's wait. And so we got to like, you basically go under the overpass where the Taco Bell is. If you live in downtown Louisville, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And then basically it's like 200 meters, maybe even less than that, to the finish. And my dad is under that overpass, under the interstate, like cheering, going nuts, and like screaming, come on, go. And I am like in my mind tactically saying, no, wait, 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 wait.
Yeah.
And sure enough, with like, we crashed under the overpass, and we passed the Taco Bell, and I make like my last surge and just like pour it all out. And there's somebody got it on video, and basically you see it, like you just see it happen. I go by him, and he like begins to react, and then there's just like nothing, and he's like done. And I like charge the finish, get the win, and it was probably one of like the.
Then he got a little taste of it too.
Yeah, and it was definitely like a good. It was I think we ended up splitting like sub 14 for the second 5K of that 10K. Like it was.
Oh my gosh.
We were cooking. And it was definitely one of the hardest races I'd run. And he came up to me afterwards and like congratulated me, but then told me I was working harder than him. And I was like, well, yes, that's why I beat you today. Like, don't take it for granted, you know? And then 2 weeks later, you know, like 2 weeks later, he went off and ran like insanely fast at the Cherry Blossom 10 miler. You know, he was definitely fit.
Oh, okay.
So it was a good feeling though to get it in.
Oh,
I
the
mean,
Papa John's?
No, I won Papa John's against Jaffet,
And he went to Cherry Blossom?
He went up to Cherry Blossom in DC to like chase some money.
Well, that would have been an epic battle for the 10 mile, like after you guys
yeah,
battled the 5K.
it was even worse weather. It was like 31 degrees and like snowing. That was like miserable.
Oh my gosh.
So miserable.
The Triple Crown, the races are amazing, but it's always like, for some reason, they have horrible luck with the weather. Like, it's always bad weather, it seems like.
It's spring in the Ohio River Valley. You don't know what you're going to get.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you recently won your first trail race, right? Or first trail race?
Ultra trail race, yeah. So
yeah.
I'd actually
How was
run,
that?
Entertaining. So, you know, COVID this summer kind of like ruined racing. You saw my resume. The last race I have on there is the trials. Well, I guess I had Houston, and then I ran the trials in February. And then I hadn't raced really since then. So I was pretty beat up after the trials, both like physically, because I like got knocked over at mile 9 and finished anyway, and like was just beat to crap. Like I hurt. But then also mentally, I was like burnt. I was just like, it was a big push to get there. I missed my qualifier at Chicago, went back 12 weeks later and ran Houston and ran the full, and got it, you know, got my qualifier there. And then it was like 5 weeks later was the Olympic trials. So a lot of marathons, a lot of training. I was just physically kind of at the end of my rope, and just mentally kind of tired at that point. So I sat around for 6 weeks and didn't do anything. And then that got me into basically March.
Good for you. I would too.
And I was just like, I got to find something to get me motivated. And so guys on the team were talking about doing some, like trying to do some fast track stuff. And I was like, no, that doesn't sound fun. And then some other guys were like, I think we're going to train for Chicago again. And I was like, no, that doesn't sound fun. I was like, I've always wanted to run trails. I did a lot of time in Flagstaff back in like college for like when we would go out there and run in the summer. And then I spent like 6 months out there after I graduated college for like extended altitude training. And I ran a lot of trails, and I always found that I ran more trails than some of the more higher level road guys. They just didn't tend to go out onto some of the single track stuff that I like to go out on. So I always had an interest in it, but never really pursued it. And so out here, the summer is the time to go to the mountains and get the elevation and see the amazing views. Yeah. So I said, there's no races right now anyway, so what's the pressure? So let's just go do something different. So I got really into it. I signed up for a 50 miler that was supposed to happen in September, but halfway through the summer it got canceled. So I basically trained, but then I just basically just started running. I wasn't really training, I was just running. And I had 2 buddies from this group run I do at work. And we'd all kind of made a pact that we were going to run the Wonderland Trail, which is a 93-mile trail around the base of Mount Rainier, sometime in the summer. So in September, or maybe it was August, we did that. We split it over 3 days, and we had a guy like pack our gear. Another friend of ours had like a camper van, and he took our tent and our food and moved it to like our 2 campsites. And basically it was like a 34-mile day, a 36-mile day, and then a 24-mile day. And it was pretty brutal, but absolutely amazing. We had a great weather, and it was definitely one of the cooler experiences I've ever had. But it wasn't racing; it was just running for fun. And then come October, I was back training a little bit, and I got word that the governor had lifted or adjusted some of the restrictions on competition, and so it looked like we were going to be able to sneak in a trail race. And so the summer trail series that had gotten canceled, their last race of the season is always in October. So they went ahead and had it, and I signed up for the 50K. Maybe a little rashly. After the Wonderland, I hadn't done a lot of training. I'd taken a few weeks down and then was slowly getting back into it. But I wanted to do it, and there was a 20-mile option and a 6-mile option and a 5K, but I was like, nah, let's just go do a 50K, see what it's all about. So
yeah.
So
Like
yeah,
you
I
said,
did one.
now's the time to do it. I mean,
so it's fun. It's out of this park outside of Seattle called Cougar Mountain, and it's fun trails. Nothing crazy. It's not like the super technical stuff up in the mountains where it's like really rocky and you're above the tree line, that kind of stuff. It's down in the trees, but still a ton of elevation. I mean, 50K, 31 miles, but we had over 7,000 feet elevation gain. So I mean, that's a pretty gnarly run. And I'm stubborn.
Yeah, that is.
I'm a road runner, so like I don't want to walk the hills, which is something that like people in ultra running tell you to do. So I made it through the first like 22 miles without needing to walk any hills. And then I got out of that. You do this one loop inside a park, then you go over to this other park and do more climbing, and then you come back out into the original park. And then basically you cross the road and you go into that park, and then it's just a mile of like climbing. And then another one. So I got to like the mile 26 aid station, and I've been sucking on goos and like energy drink. And I just was like, give me a Fig Newton. Like they had all this stuff laid out, and there was like potato chip and like gummies and like all this stuff. And I was just like, give me that Fig Newton. Like I want something besides a goo. And it tasted so good. But I was definitely not moving as quickly. That last like 8 or 9 miles, is definitely a new level of, I'm just tired. You're tired.
Yeah.
It's just that, and that's, but my mindset was like, well, I could run 26 miles. I can run 31 miles. Like I can run the distance. I did it this summer. But I hadn't really push it. But so I pushed it. But we kind of spaced out. There wasn't really anybody else around. So I knew when I started to fade, I wasn't like too worried. But yeah, it was great. I had a lot of fun. I'm signed up for Black Canyon Ultra 100K in February. That's actually what I'm training for right now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So 31 miles isn't enough. I'm going to go run 62 and try to do it faster. So.
How many people typically run that one? Is that like a big ultra
That's
race?
A big one because it's sponsored by Hoka, and it's one of 3 golden ticket races for Western States this year.
Wow.
So if you finish in the top 2, you get to go to the Western State 100 miler.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I've always wanted to run that. Even before I even started doing trail running, just back in high school, I remember reading a Runner's World article about it and seeing this like stupid belt buckle that you can get if you finish in under 24 hours.
Yeah.
And I want the belt buckle. That's what I want. So there's a lottery system where you can like earn points and get in that way, or you can get a golden ticket. And getting a golden ticket is probably a really ambitious goal, but like, why not?
Yeah, go for it.
So,
I've actually been thinking.
That's kind of the plan. I guess I just put it out there. I'm trying to qualify.
Yes.
But that's,
Hey, you put your goals out there and keep yourself accountable.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's been different.
I actually thought about you because Scott and I recently watched Actually, I don't know if Scott watched it, but I watched it pretty closely. The Barkley Marathons,
Oh
the
God,
documentary. Has anyone ever brought that up to you?
I've
You
watched
wouldn't
it.
do it?
Did you watch Where Dreams Go to Die?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
For
yeah, it's
some
so
reason, I got
miserable.
into this Barkley Marathons kick, and like I
Dude,
would watch
dude,
it on my iPad, like while I was running on the treadmill.
that's
And I
brutal.
was just like, I saw a bunch of your pictures from Seattle, like running trails and stuff. I was like, Michael would be perfect for this. I
No,
feel like he should totally do this.
no,
You would?
no.
Oh man.
It's orientation on top of that, and it's not really on. It's like trails, but then it's also like out in the middle of nowhere with no trails, and like I
Yep.
don't know. It doesn't look like
And
my
there's not
jam.
really any tracking. Like I think they just recently allowed you to wear like a $10 Timex watch from
Yeah,
Walmart or something.
yeah,
But before that, like you couldn't even wear,
yeah,
anything that showed the time or whatever.
yeah. It also like
So it's definitely interesting.
Where Dreams Go to Die, like Barkley basically like ended Gary Robinson's like pro career. It didn't end
Yeah.
it, but like he hasn't really raced the same since then. Like he's done some impressive
Yeah.
things, but he hasn't like competed on the level that he competed, chasing that year after year. So like
Yes.
it just seems like I want to do some like races before I go into like that extreme.
Yeah.
Though I do have a fast packing bag, a Gore-Tex bivy sack, and like an ultra lightweight cooking kit now. So next summer I'm definitely planning some like multi-day super distance excursions out into the mountains. But I'm
Yeah.
not. I have no interest in the Barkley. I have no interest in the
Ugh.
Barkley, and I have no interest in like any kind of Forest Service road, like flat trail road. Or if
I think
anybody
you
asks
should
if I
do
want to go
like
run
one
like
lap of the Barkley Marathons, just to do
or if
one
anyone
lap.
wants to know if I want to go run a road ultra, I do not want to run any road ultras. Like 26 miles on the road is enough. Like the idea,
Yeah.
like 50 miles on the road, no thanks. Like the thing about the trail
Yeah.
to me is the exploring the mountains, exploring the wilderness,
Mhm.
challenging yourself to see how far you can go, that kind of stuff. It's just
Mhm.
beautiful. Like it's beautiful out
Yeah.
there, and I spent the last however many years since high school like training to be as fast as possible all the time. And sometimes I just want to go like run in the hills and like look at the
Yeah.
trees and look at the birds and like take in the view and enjoy it. And so
Yeah.
that's what I've been doing. And so for me, like the idea of ultras for the sake of just the distance, like no,
Mhm.
I don't want to touch the pavement. I want to like go have soft trails under my feet and like enjoy it for a while. So saying
Yeah.
that and
No,
then
I get
also saying
that.
that I want to
You
get a
want to keep
golden ticket to
for
Western
running
States is
too.
kind of an oxymoron, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like I want to run the trails that are like trails, not the trails that are like roads.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, what would you say are some of the biggest lessons you've learned throughout your journey? I know that's a really big question,
Mm.
but is there anything you can think of?
I mean, I just think the biggest thing with running, both training and I mean, and then how it applies to life is just consistency. You get better
Mhm.
at running because you're consistently training, and that applies to life as well. But the secret to consistency is resiliency, because
Mhm.
you're not going to be healthy all the time. You're going to eventually get injured. I don't care how good at stretching you are and how many massages you get and like all that. Like eventually you're going to get injured. And if you don't get necessarily physically injured, you're going to have setbacks. And if you can't
Yeah.
bounce back from those, um, you're going to probably give up a lot sooner than you need to. Um,
Mhm.
like, I'm 33, I'll turn 34 next year, and there's a lot of people with way more talent than I ever have, that, hung them up long before I did, because they wanted to pursue something else. And that's fine. I mean, that's, everybody's journey is different. But if the reason they're hanging them up is because they don't think they can do it anymore, I don't think that's true. I think with the right mindset, um, and the right, just like drive and, and then smart training, like you can continue to push through. Um, and
Mhm.
eventually old man strength, old woman strength kicks in, and years of experience play into your hand. The young pups make mistakes as long as you can keep your cool. So I would just say through the years, like, yeah, that's been my biggest lesson is you get knocked down, you get back up. You get knocked down, you get back up, and you keep going. And I think that works in life as well. A lot of crappy stuff
Well said.
happens, and you get up again if you can, and you keep pushing forward. And that's how you get better as a runner and as a person. So.
Well said. There's been a lot of, say, older runners who have been kind of proving the theory wrong that like you get past a certain age and you just have to be done. Like, you know, there's 40-year-old females who are competing at the Olympic trial marathons. I mean, they're like up there in the front of the pack, you know? So I think that just says a lot about the mental strength that you have to keep going. And like, age doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Maybe after a certain point, but like, you know, you can keep going if you keep your head in the game.
Yeah.
So who has been the greatest influence on your running career and why?
That is a great question. I would say a lot of it probably comes from my dad. He was a big pusher of me to get into like sports in general, and then he was quite the runner himself back in high school. So when it turned out that my brother and I both kind of like took after him in that sense, he definitely pushed both of us to kind of really drive and chase that for as long as possible. He always told me and my brother in high school is like, you have two jobs. It's high school and running. So like go to school and then go run. And then, you know, like you can do chores, but you don't need to go find a job. Like everybody turns 16 and tries to go find a job. And some people have to, and I understand that. But like I was lucky and I grew up in a house where like we had the resources that we needed to be able to like do that, and I didn't need to go get a job. I could focus on training. And just instilling that mindset that like life is going to be there waiting for you once you're done running. So like there's no reason to rush into the career or whatever. Just like keep pursuing your passion. I think that I learned a lot of that from him. Probably to this point he probably like hates saying that because like I'm 33 and like I sell shoes for a living still, which is fine, but like I don't think he thought I was going to be. He always jokes like you shouldn't be Al Bundy, and I was like, I kind of take offense to that. Because one, that's like the only thing I've ever done, and like, but also like it's why I'm able to still run all this time later. So like, but I know what he means. You parents work up these things in their mind of what they think their kids are going to do, and then we take those ideas and crack them on the pavement and keep doing what we do. So. So I think it drives him nuts. But then I married a future neurosurgeon, so I think he kind of like got over that. And then I would say, my dad, but then also like my mom. You got to balance it, right? Like my dad was that hard push, but my mom was that like sympathetic and gentle and understanding side that when I had a bad day, she was there to like make me feel better about it, and going in that sense and provide that style of support. And then I'm an adult now, and I've been married for 6 years, and like honestly my wife is one of the biggest supporters of what I do. And ironically, she could probably like care less about running, but she cares a whole lot about me. And so if I have a dream to go do something, like she supports me in it 100%. I think the reason we work so well is because we're equally passionate, but about different things. I think we're both two competitive individuals. If we were in the same field, we would hate each other. So the fact that he's in medicine and I'm in athletics is probably a good separation. We can respect and there's
obviously like a ton of respect.
But we don't have to step on each other's toes, basically.
Oh yeah. But there's a ton of respect there, obviously, between you and her.
Oh, yeah.
Like you said, she wants you to be happy and do what you love. And she wants you, what was that?
I said, there's definitely a great deal of respect. And I also know who got the better end of the deal. So, it's like. Yeah. I joke now, though. People ask her what I do, and she's like, oh, he's a runner. But then when they ask me, I'm like, oh, I'm a trophy husband. My wife's a doctor, and all I do is like work out and try to stay fit and take care of the house. That's what I do.
Well, you should just start being like, no, I'm a professional runner. and I'm pursuing my dreams and doing what makes me happy.
Yeah.
Well, I know we have to wrap it up soon, but can you tell us a personal running related story that you will carry with you the rest of your life? I guess you kind of talked about, running the 10K and like hearing from somebody that you looked up to, but is there any other story you could tell us?
I got one more for you. So I don't know, some people probably know this, but not a lot of people I know this. So my wife in medical school, between her third and fourth year, got a grant to go do research in Malawi, Africa. So we lived in Malawi for 9 months. And it was just after the 2016 Olympic trials. Basically, I ran that in like February, and surprise, surprise, it didn't go well. Seems like the Olympic trials never go well for me. But I was kind of in the same kind of state as I was after this last one, kind of just burnt and over it and kind of having a hard time finding the motivation to get after it. But we moved to Malawi and I started training again, running a little bit. And I met a couple guys that lived in the town I was living in and were in the military, but they were both really good runners. One was like a 1,500 meter runner and the other one was a marathoner. So we made a really weird training group because one was like very speed based guy and one was a distance guy like me. But we met nearly every day and trained together. And over the course of the year or the time we were there, they ended up having a track meet. The Chinese is super involved in Malawi. And so they built them this new stadium. And so on the opening day of the stadium, they were going to do a friendly match between the Chinese national team and the Malawi national team soccer teams. But before the soccer meet, they were going to do a 3-event track meet. And one of those events was a 1,500 meter.
What?
Yeah, this is wild. And so they got me in because they like could pull strings. They knew people like in the governing body for the Malawi Track and Field Association. So they got me in. Well, this isn't like a dinky little soccer stadium. This is like a 40,000 person capacity stadium. And it's opening day and it's free. So it's full. So I show up to run this race and they squeeze like 20 of us into this 1,500 meter. It's like the most people you would ever, like you shouldn't put this many people in a 1,500 meter, but sure enough, they did it. And the gun goes off, and my buddy, who's the 1,500 meter guy, like bolts to the front. And then there's another guy who ran in the Olympics and the 5K for them that was there as well. So he's up there. And then there's like, I'm back in like 5th place. And I'm like going around first lap, second lap. And as we cross there and we're going around to start our like 3rd lap, I'm like, all right, I need to move up. And so I swing out from behind the like 3rd place guy at this point and like start going around him. And as I start going around him, there's this noise. And at first it's like this dull rumble. And then it just like escalates to this just maddening like roar. You can't hear anything because this noise.
Really?
It's the crowd. They are going insane. I imagine this is what it's like at like a pro sports game, like football, basketball.
Yeah.
Like but like I'd never been in a place where there were 40,000 people reacting to a thing I was doing. And it was wild. Because I'm like a 6'3"
awesome.
white guy in the middle of Malawi racing all these guys who are like 5'4". So I stick out like a sore thumb, and so I go zipping around and pull up to like 3rd place right behind my buddy and kind of like tuck in right there. But the reaction of the crowd in that moment was one of the like craziest experiences.
Thank you for watching our 3rd episode of our Runners of Louisville segment. We appreciate Michael coming on and talking about his running career, and we're excited for what he does in the future. Tune in with us next month for our 4th episode. You won't want to miss this athlete.